Hey, this is Ronda Rousey, and you're listening to Sherdog Radio Network.
And now, the Sunday Sit Down with Jack Encarnacio.
Welcome back to the Sherdog Radio Network Rewind. I'm Jack Encarnacio, and it's once again time for the Sunday Sit Down. Well, it's official. The first female fight in UFC history is set. Ronda Rousey will defend the UFC Women's Bantamweight title against Liz Carmouche, February 27th in Anaheim. With it come questions. Are there enough contenders to sustain a division? Will it draw? Is it something fans will wholeheartedly embrace? Shannon Knapp doesn't only think yes is the answer to these questions, she's out to prove it. This year, she and a business partner founded Invicta Fighting Championships, an all-female MMA promotion. The league already has 3 critically acclaimed events under its belt, featuring a cross-section of some of the best and most recognized female fighters. On January 5th, at Invicta 4 in Kansas City, Kansas, the promotion will crown its inaugural 115-pound strawweight champion when Carla Esparza, a Team Oyama product coming off 2 consecutive TKO wins, meets Claudia Gadelha, a 23-year-old undefeated submission whiz from Brazil in her U.S. debut. Shannon Knapp joins us tonight to share frontline intelligence on the state of female mixed martial arts at a critical time for the genre. Shannon, it's a pleasure to have you on the Rewind.
Oh, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Sure. You know, Shannon, we hear these questions about the depth in female MMA, and I'm looking at this Invicta 4 card. You've got a thick 6-fight main card, 6 preliminary fights. That's 24 fighters, and you've done this 4 times in less than a year. Why do people not think there's talent out there?
I think sometimes it gets spun kind of a different way than really the way it's intended or meant. And why I say that is that there's depth. You know, I always try to explain this. There's depth by definition of what depth is. There are a ton of girls that want to fight, new girls coming in every day. I mean, when you have athletes like Ronda Rousey out there, Liz Carmouche, all these girls that are getting this exposure and knocking down the old barriers, it's really drawing in a lot of new young athletes coming in. But where we really struggle is because we're so far behind in the progression, progressing forward, that it's in that upper echelon of the sport. So when you get to, let's call them the top tier, those A-level athletes, we're a little thin in the divisions. So for that type of, that upper echelon of the sport. But otherwise, there are a ton of girls that want to fight. And it's just that process of continuing to move forward and, get them the experience they need and build the divisions, more depth in them.
I wonder, and if you have any insight into this, I know you're certainly not in the head of Dana White or anybody else making these decisions, but I wonder if we're going to develop this idea of a UFC caliber female fighter like we do with the men, because as you mentioned, Shannon, that upper echelon is particularly thin, and I wonder, what kind of vetting the UFC is going to have to get used to doing in terms of, having someone in. Is it just strictly, record? Is it just strictly, she's got a lot of fights, she's got a lot of wins, she looks impressive, or are they willing to roll the dice on some brand new fighters, maybe for a reality show or something like that?
Definitely, yeah, I cannot speak for them, but, I think that, they're going to look for that top-tier quality athlete. They're definitely, Ronda's she's a very popular, very talented athlete. I mean, you can't just throw anybody in there. I mean, you're going to have to, and especially to go along and stay within the same, giving the same type of product that they give in all their other matches, especially on the main cards. I mean, you're going to have to serve up some good talent. I mean, I don't think you can go in and put the pro debuters in there or stuff like that.
Well, I'm thinking when we talk about upper echelon athletes, strictly defined, I mean, Ronda Rousey, day one, as far as female MMA, is that person, even though she doesn't have, at the time, of course, with 0 fights, a lot of fights. Randy Miller, who you had on one of your cards, an Olympian as well. I'm thinking, with maybe just some significant fight training at a significant camp, if you were an Olympic caliber athlete as a woman, the UFC might be willing to go with you right away. I'm thinking there might actually be some rethinking there.
Yeah, I think that's possible. I think right now is, we just continue to try to grow and evolve the sport. I think we're learning a lot of different things as we go along. I don't think there's any real right way or wrong way. I think time's going to tell. I really do. I'm going to venture to say that card, that Anaheim card, is going to do extremely well. I really think it will do really well, surprisingly well, that it'll surprise people with, Rhonda and Liz, being the main event on that card. But, time. I think it's just going to take time to figure things out and to see where we're really at. I mean, even when, I took on this job as being, coming in and trying to organize the divisions and with Invicta, I had no clue, and I couldn't have told you it was going to go this way. So I think that, it's still just going to be that process of continuing to, get a feel for things and see where things are going to go.
Yeah, you said, Shannon, we've learned as we've gone. Can you give me maybe one specific example of something you've learned that perhaps you didn't realize out of the gate founding Invicta that would be the case?
Okay, yeah. I mean, let's talk about the social media. I learned that, the best asset that I have when it comes to marketing my events are the female athletes themselves, and the way they use social media. It's a little bit different than when, some of the guys aren't as active, and I don't know if it's because, I don't want to call it a girl thing or anything like that, but I just find that the females maybe are more into it, more, I don't know how to, I don't know how I want to characterize it.
No, you're right. Following a lot of fighters on Twitter, I totally understand where you're coming from on that.
Yeah, so that would be one thing that I learned. I also learned that, there's so many things I've learned along the way, but, I've learned that, it's almost like 10 years ago working with the men. And, when the sport was so young for them, learning that what was happening back then really does apply to what is going on right at this moment with the female athletes. It's almost like if you look 10 years back where the men were, that's where the females are. So, you learn a lot of things from that time, and, and I'm applying them. But there also are a lot of other differences as you go along that, these girls fight hard. I mean, they fight like they're fighting to get to the cage. And once they get in there, they bring it. So, yeah, it's just a process of learning each time as you go. And it's been exciting, This is what I like. I like to get in there and make a difference. And this is why I got in the sport. So it's been very rewarding for me.
Thinking through the idea that female MMA now is sort of where male MMA, if we want to say it that way, was 10 years ago, is sort of intriguing because when I think about just in the past few years, the sort of level of competitiveness within the body of a 15-minute female MMA fight, the degree to which, it's not – I just remember hook and shoot, and these girls going out there and just, swinging for each other's faces, and if they could pull hair, they would, and they were tough girls, and they trained, but they had, even less than one narrow skill set. It was like, only if one woman was particularly good, and Rhonda is kind of an extension of this, although she's so phenomenally good as a judo athlete. She's one of the best athletes in any room she's in. I don't care what the gender makeup is of it.
Right.
She could just doze through everybody. I mean, just the technique is so much slicker. I can see how someone would watch female MMA 10 years ago, Shannon, and think there's no way this is ever going to be in prime time because we just didn't see fights that looked as athletically and as aesthetically pleasing as the men fights did.
Well, you've got to realize, 10 years ago when you're looking over and looking at that, nobody wanted to touch it. I mean, the females had a hard time, going into the gym and finding somebody that wanted to work out with them, guys that wanted to teach them, or people that wanted to manage them. Let's face it, there was no money. So you're looking, and I say this all the time, there has never, there's always been a lack of opportunity. That is exactly what has hindered the progression. And the females evolving in the sport. It's absolutely what has, kind of stopped it in its tracks and made it such a slow climb to get anywhere. Is because opportunities didn't exist. So I always firmly believe, and I think, our history is showing, that all I needed to do, that old saying, build it and they will come, is build a platform. Give them their platform, their place to shine. And in doing that, look where we're at. I mean, if you think about it, 2012 was the year of the female. I mean, there are so many things that have changed this last year. I mean, would you have thought that you'd be looking at, a main event, female fighting, in the UFC card, this soon?
No, I would have no money on that. And you know what, to get this further, I'm an all-female made promotion like to last more than one show.
Exactly. I would. Okay, let's take him. An 8-man a year.
That's right, the Fighter Awards.
Yeah.
Good luck with that, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you. But I mean, just if you look at that within itself in a category with, guys like, Lorenzo and Dana and Yorn and, who would have thought that? So, I mean, it's really been a strong year to build, and, 2012 has definitely been the year of the female. I mean, it's been interesting.
It sure has. It really has sprouted quickly, and, once the snowball starts rolling down the hill, I mean, well, downhill is not the right analogy, but you take my meaning. Right, it starts to blossom very quickly. One thing you mentioned I want to go back to really quickly, because it is interesting, the degree to which females embrace social media, the female fighters in particular. We see male fighters at the top level kind of push and campaign to fight each other, but they don't seem to build as good of a story as Twitter can. I mean, during the Ronda Rousey Miesha Tate breakthrough fight in March, that was a breakthrough fight in so many ways, and the way that lead up and build up went has a lot to do with why we're seeing Ronda in the UFC less than a year later. They were just building this fight on Twitter every single day, and it didn't feel fake.
Right. No. And let me tell you, it wasn't fake.
Right. Oh, I know it wasn't. But, sometimes when a fighter does that, it seems so calculated and so coming from a place of trying to get yourself a big payday that it's hard to really get invested in it. And I find when the female fighters go at it on Twitter, you don't really feel that instinct that they're just trying to line up a payday for themselves.
No, they're very, that's another one of the things I've learned. Even though I'm a female, they're very emotionally connected. Very. Right. I'm kind of always the flip side. I think I've just worked so long with men and the boys. I always call them the boys. It's an endearing term, not a bad one. But I always, I think that I've just kind of been I'm a little callous to that. So, watching it now, it's like, yes, they're very connected and very passionate and very emotional about what they're doing. And I think that's part of why you're seeing these kinds of fights. But you know what? They're also very, very humble, very kind. You wouldn't believe the emails I get. I mean, right before we started the interview, I get an email from a young fighter that's just coming into the sport, not looking for a fight, but just coming into the sport, saying thank you for the motivation and helping me to determine that this was a road I could go down because there's an opportunity, that type of thing. So we're making big changes out there, and I think that, years ago, like I said, when I got in the sport, it was to make a difference with the males. And, we're at that point where everybody's great, the sport's thriving, great things. So to be able to have that opportunity to do it again, that's very exciting.
Strikeforce was a big platform for Ronda Rousey, but this UFC platform is a totally different plane. The potential it represents. Do you think that Ronda, I mean, I'm again asking you to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Let's step back as a promoter. If you were promoting, this particular Rousey fight and females coming into the UFC, are you cognizant of the fact that you really could create a generation of girls who want to train to fight? Gina fought on CBS. It's not like it's never been before the nation before, but I think being integrated into the world's biggest organization and not part of kind of this catch-all card with Kimbo at the top and things like that, I think there's a chance to really see it in a different light. I mean, are you cognizant of that, and are you a little careful in how you promote everything, knowing that this could very well be that kind of culture shift as opposed to just being viewed as some special attraction?
Yeah, I think definitely. As a promoter, this is a huge, huge opportunity, but it's also a sink and swim type of opportunity too.
Absolutely.
I think you're really taking a big gamble, but I think going out there and promoting it for what it is instead of trying to make a circus out of it or adding something to it that's going to send it in a different direction, like making it too feminine. In terms of where it becomes all about looks and isn't so much more focused on the accomplishments and that in the matchup, then I think giving a well-rounded marketing approach instead of pigeonholing it, as we call it, in one direction or the other, I think will be huge. There's a lot of good substance to this bout. Liz is a former Marine, an Olympian, your countries. There's so many different ways to spin it and to write positive, influence to persuade people to buy into it. Both got great stories. They're both different. So I think, and I think the UFC, I mean, come on, let's face it, they do an amazing job in the marketing. And, although it's not my promotion, I mean, I'm going to promote this too. I mean, I look at it this way. We all fight on the same team. I mean, my business deals strictly in female athletes. And whatever happens over there can only help to benefit my cause as well, as I, try to move the sport forward. So I think it's a great thing. I wish them much success.
I really can't wait to see the treatment they give it, because it's sort of interesting and historic enough to say that this is the first female fight in the UFC, and Ronda Rousey is this superstar with this amazing personality and this killer armbar. But like you said, Shannon, you could easily make this marketing approach all about who these two girls are, and they happen to be women fighting. The fact that they're female fighting in the UFC for the first time could sort of be the last thing that you emphasize in the marketing approach.
Well, I mean, definitely when you come to market it, if it's all about that, the first time women ever fighting, I mean, you're getting a whole different type of viewer. The viewer is coming in to see, do they belong there? I mean, you come in with a whole different attitude.
You said a pretense.
Yeah, there's a whole different, complete different pretense and attitude as coming in to watch the fight. It's to prove or not to prove. But I think if you go in with the approach that, these are amazing athletes, this is this character over here, and this is this one, and this is their story in their lives, and you build that momentum so that no matter who you are in the world, that you find something to identify and connect with, and be it a male or a female, because let's face it, I mean, some of them are going to look over and they're going to be like, the female reminds them of their mother, or their friend, or, something to connect with, or Liz, being a Marine. There's a lot of military in the world, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, just finding that thing to connect and build the story like that, I think you're setting the stage for less opportunity for failure or criticism, I guess is the better word.
Yeah, it's interesting you put it that way, because I think the buy rate that this does, the pay-per-view buys that this does, is going to be very influential in how, fans, media, executives, everybody views kind of the viability of this at this level. So you got to do it the right way, because you got to give Ronda and Liz a fighting chance to do a really good pay-per-view number.
Well, and that's where, when I said I'm not the promoter, but I will promote this, is because right there, that's what it's about. Is, this is a very defining moment, in the sport for the females. I mean, you hate to put all that over on top of both of these girls, but, it truly is. And, I'm going to support it because, like I said, we're fighting the same fight. I always joke and say to put Ronda on my payroll because, every day time she opens her mouth, she helps what I'm doing, and vice versa. So I think it's a great thing, and I think that this is a very significant part of where the females will, end up in the sport.
You think everybody's going to want to make 135 now?
Yeah. Well, you know what? The funny thing about it is, I mean, I laugh, but the funny thing in all of this is that's what it's been. I mean, when you talk about seeing mismatched fights and all that kind of stuff, is you've seen 115-pounders trying to jump up to 135 to get that fight that won in Strikeforce, because remember we only dealt with, 2 divisions there. So, I mean, we've been seeing that forever, and once we started Invicta, I started to see, that's another thing I learned, I started to see that these weight classes started to become legitimate. Like I was finding that athletes were, falling into place where they belonged instead of jumping up 2 and 3 different weight classes just to have a chance. So I'll never forget one of the media that handles, does a lot of stuff for, the female athletes in the fight promotions. He said to me, I've never seen so many 105-pounders. Because the minute we opened up that opportunity and that weight division, everybody moved down. So it's crazy. But I think you're going to see, I think you'll see a lot of that. But I hope, honestly, I hope that the UFC makes it, I'm going to get ridiculed for saying this, but I hope that they keep it elite. Does that make sense?
I think so. Expound, though. Make sure we understand what you mean.
Well, making it elite, like, that I always look at it this way. Years ago, it was such an incredible honor and such a statement and such an elite thing to be in the UFC. There was such a pride about it. I've noticed there's been a shift in that over the years a little bit.
Yeah. Well, the roster is double the size.
Exactly. I mean, it's become, not that people aren't proud, but they just don't, I noticed that they don't hold it to that higher regard like they used to.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope with the females, this is an opportunity to regain some of that back, and I hope that that's along the lines of the way this goes. Is that it's an elite, it's something to be proud and highly regarded.
Right, and to aspire to, and not necessarily to stumble into, because X Fighter got hurt because there's 16,000 shows a month. Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, and I think it does with female MMA, and if they only do 135-pound weight class. Yeah, that's true. I'm not. All right, that was my own statement there. The opinions expressed are not those of Shannon Knapp, right? But I think it got me thinking in that direction. Yes. Well, do you think? I mean, you've worked, as you said earlier, in the industry for so many years with the boys, as you put it, with kind of the front lines of this business with the male fighters. It's not like you just jumped in when you saw an opportunity with the females, but of course you intimately know what it's like to work with female fighters and put cards together and things like that. Bottom line, do women have more difficulty cutting weight than men, and does that mitigate at all sort of their ability to shift weight classes?
Absolutely. I mean, that's another thing I learned. You asked about it. Yes, it's harder, and you notice as females get older, it's more of a challenge at times. But I think that it's also that process of educating. I mean, when there was no organization to this side of the sport, I mean, everybody's just jumping all over the place. I don't think that most of the females were really educated when it came to the weight cut. But once you get into where you should be as far as your optimum weight and the weight division, I think it becomes a lot easier. I put a lot of stiff fines in place. I mean, I tried to take away that excuse, that, well, I'm a female and it is harder. I tried to make everybody accountable because that's what we do with the men, and the boys. I mean, it's definitely that, you have to be accountable if you want to be in the sport. You need to make weight. So, in other words, get in the weight division you belong in and stay in that weight division. So it kind of, deterred everybody from jumping around, which makes for better fights, and safety, whatever, it's just all around much better.
Oh, certainly. I think it's been demonstrated when, female fighters have jumped around weight classes. I think of Gina and how much difficulty she had. Her weight cut was a spectacle every single time. Her weigh-in was a spectacle every single time because you didn't know if she'd be able to pull off what they were demanding of her because where the big fights were, where they wanted the division to be. And I think you're right. If females settle into a weight that they know they can make reliably, that'll make all the difference in the world in terms of this perception that you're not sure if they're going to hit the scales. You're not sure if the fight's going to go off as planned. I mean, we hear all the time female fights when they fall through that it's an injury, quote unquote, but it's also a girl who says I'm not going to be able to make this weight.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean that's and me coming into the space and trying to make a difference. I knew one of the biggest ridicules and one of the things that were going to be said was going to be about the weight. And the female athletes making a weight, and they were going to be judged by that. So I came in really fast and, immediately addressed that issue. I mean, I put really, I know a lot of people aren't happy about it, but I put stiff fines in place. It's like if you step on the scale and you don't make weight, you're fined. No ifs, ands, or buts, because the girl that is competing against you, she made weight. And I never think that's fair. And then I'm like, okay, you go and you get your time, commission allotted time to cut that weight. But if you come back, you're fined again, if you don't make weight. And then it's up to that athlete that you're supposed to fight if they still want to fight you. I mean, I just think that putting, I felt bad. It's like me being a parent and putting in all these, you're going to get in trouble if you do that kind of stuff. But, I just felt like the only way really to get to people and make them understand that we're not cutting slack, this is a professional organization, I don't care what you've done in the past, this is the way we do it, was to put fines in place, because if you make, you touch people's money, that's when they get upset. That's when it really counts. So it's worked really well. I think it's been a case of just, educating them.
Surely. I'll be interested to see with this premium now being on 135 to get a chance in the UFC, I don't see them doing more than one weight class, at least initially, to see if that's something they might run into, a speed bump. It's definitely going to be something that's going to be vetted quite seriously. And we hear, just with Chris Cyborg and all of the talk and buzz and around and all the different perspectives around whether she can make the weight to fight Ronda. It's something that I'm sure they're going to have to think very carefully about in promoting fights, because there's nothing they hate more, of course, especially if there's just a champion, who might lose the title stakes of a fight if someone doesn't make weight for that to be an issue. Let's shift gears quickly here with you, Shannon, and just tell us how you got into the business in the first place.
I was a broadcaster and a self-defense instructor, but, I've always kind of been into combat sports. And, I used to, I always watched the UFC from way back in the day. And, I don't know. I guess you just come to this point when you say to yourself, is this what you want to do, and can you make a difference? And I always felt that I could, so that's kind of how it started. It was really just that desire, to come into the sport and help move it forward and make a difference. I've always been a huge advocate for the athlete and the sport as a whole. So, what was
your first job in the business?
Very first one. Let me think. I got to think back. My first job. It's been so long ago. I think I worked with. I worked with Randy Couture and Boss Rutan and Sport Fight. That was the first one kind of in. I was Boss's assistant, or Randy's assistant, and I worked with Boss in the same capacity. And, there were times back then, though, that you had to work like 5 jobs just to make, very earnest living. So, sure. I was like Randy's assistant, Boss's, I worked for Sports Fight, I worked for King of the Cage, I worked for UFC, I worked for, so it was just like that. I literally had a handful of jobs.
What did you do at the UFC?
Back then, I did interviews.
Of course.
Stuff like that. I was, I was a contractor. It's a really long time ago. So, but that's kind of where I started. And then, as I moved along, I left there and went to the IFL. And at the IFL, I did some of the same stuff in the production side. But then I moved over into athlete relations, and I became the first female executive as director of fighter relations.
Tell us about the IFL. What lessons should we take from that promotion? Because, man, it seems like a lifetime ago at this point.
Doesn't it? Yes. What lessons? I learned a lot of what not to do there. Everybody's heart was in the right place. Everybody was very passionate about it. However, they just did everything in great excess. They spent a lot of money, and I think that's the biggest deal is, no matter how much money you throw at something, it doesn't make it better, bigger, and more received, by people. People don't just embrace it just because you throw more money at it. So I think that was one of the bigger lessons. I learned with that, just sitting back and watching. But, yeah, like I said, everybody had, their hearts were in the right place. Mm-hmm. They just fell short with knowing, what to do with all that.
What about the team concept? What about the Silverbacks versus the Anacondas?
I can't even believe you remember that. It just cracks me up.
Oh, come on. Who could forget?
Oh, that's true. In the end, I think they realized, when I was doing some matchmaking at the end where we were doing single bouts, and I think they realized then that, that was definitely a lot more, a better route to go than the whole team thing. So, I know the guys liked it. The fighters thought it was fun, and there were good things about it, but there was a lot of negative, too. So,
yeah, it's hard because it was intriguing. You could see the architecture of an idea there. You could see where they thought they could go to differentiate themselves. But but you also felt at the end of the show that the guys who did stand out almost stood out less because they were confined to this team, and that was the identity you were asked to associate with.
No, that's very true. I think it was interesting, because I'd been in the sport for a while at that point. I think it was interesting to see the camaraderie, the actual connection with some of the teams. Some of them were just a hodgepodge, and weren't really what you call teams. I mean, they didn't train together and stuff like that. But, there were some that were good, very connected. It was kind of cool to watch that. But with that being said, I think it was doomed. I'm trying to be so nice because you never know who's listening.
Yeah, I understand. No, I wouldn't expect you to be mean-spirited at all. I just think that,
I'm trying to be politically correct.
Yes, it's not politically correct to say that it's not politically incorrect, rather, to say that the IFL failed, because they did.
They did.
As did other promotions. Elite XC, you came through there, Affliction, and these other organizations. Elite XC, though, I want to hone in on quickly because, of course, they famously televised Carano versus Kedzie in February 2007, and really, in a lot of ways, the rest is history. It's not a stretch to connect this Rousey-Carmouche fight to that fight. I'm not positive, though, Shannon, if you were with Elite XC when they did that fight.
No, I actually never worked for them. So
you never worked for them? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you did come through there.
No, not with them. So, but I think it's like a ice block. I mean, we've been chipping away a little bit at a time. At trying to bring that awareness and to move it forward. And I think, 2012 was just the year that was the perfect storm. Everything came together. So, yeah, I think there are a lot of people, though. I mean, you might as well talk about Jeff Osborne. You might as well talk about, I mean, those are the people that really, years and years ago, started, the movement forward. But it's just taken a really long time, but there are a lot of people that have contributed, that's for sure.
Yeah, a lot of folks who will be popping champagne, so to speak, here on this because it's a lot of people who really rolled the dice. I mean, Jeff Osborne's stories are tremendous about how many people shut him down. I remember the Femme Fatales promotion that tried to get going. And a lot of these different folks that gave it a shot and just had doors shut on him or were laughed out of or Jeff Osborne, he got a lot of attention for that first, female hook and shoot show, but it was all negative attention. It was all like, look at what the heck's going on down in Indianapolis or whatever this weekend.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, that's why when we came out, when first started, because it took probably about 8 months, and I just kind of flew under the radar as we were putting, Invicta together. But I knew one thing, being in this business as long as I have been, that we had to come out, and when we did, it had to be strong. I mean, you couldn't come out one day and say, oh, hey, guess what, we're Invicta, and then the next couple of weeks, oh, hey, we're going to do a fight on X, I knew we had to come out and make a statement. And, so when we did, we came out and said, hey, we are Invicta Fighting Championships. We're doing a show on April 28th. This is a 12-fight card, and boom, there it is. So we came out swinging to make a statement. And I knew that because of the situation with the females, and right on the heels of us, or right before our event, you had Miesha Tate and Ronda Rousey. Everything, it was like playing chess, trying to stay ahead of the curve and to push this thing as fast as I could. And that's what you got to do sometimes, to build a brand and build it quickly. Mm-hmm. So,
in your experience with other organizations, I've seen you do in other interviews talk about how you certainly learned what you didn't want to do, what doesn't work. It sounds a lot like what Dana White was saying back in 2001 about lessons he learned from boxing and what to avoid in building his business. You kind of intimated a bit with throwing a lot of money at something as not being the best approach. Can you give us maybe something else that you learned? You don't have to name names or anything, but something else that you learned in your earlier experiences that decidedly doesn't work in this industry?
Decidedly. Well, we talked about the team thing.
Yeah, sure.
We talked about that. Like I said, the throwing the money and stuff, that's a really huge thing because people always seem to think that money buys everything. And it doesn't. I think learning that slow and steady wins the race, knowing that, I also feel strongly about the, moving your show around. I felt like, definitely the first year and probably majority of the second year that we needed to stay in one place and build our foundation. And, get a handle on what the costs were, get a feel for the way things were going to flow and, what the show was really going to cost us. Because the minute you start moving around, you're incurring all kinds of different costs, and things that, you can't really get a grip on and control and maneuver around because, it's a new area, you're working with new vendors, So I felt real strong about that, and I think that's a valuable lesson that I learned from, different employers, that probably building your foundation and staying in one spot is important to control your costs.
Mm-hmm.
Does that
Why
work?
have we seen? Oh, totally. That's a great example because Memorial Hall in Kansas City has a great history, not only for MMA in recent years, but pro wrestling too. It's just a building that you can get people to come to see things going on in a ring, to put it as generally as possible. What about Kansas City? Because you're not the only promotion, Invicta, that is, to run this building on the regular. What is it about Memorial Hall that's so favorable?
The one thing, and probably the only thing that I like about Memorial Hall is that, there's not a bad seat in the house. The way that the auditorium is set up with, I think they call it theater-style seating, and it doesn't matter where you're at. And actually, if you're in the GAs, what we call the general admission, those are the best seats in the house. There's just not a bad seat, and I like that. And I like the fact that it films extremely well for, television, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
It focuses on the floor instead of the bowl area. So you just get it's an intimate setting, and I think that was important to connect with the fans and to build that bridge between what we're doing and the community. So
we were talking a little bit before about Elite XC and Gina Carano. And, of course, she's going to be in any discussion of the ascension of female MMA to where we are today. Maybe she gets an offer. I don't know. She's a big Hollywood star now, so I'm sure it's going to take a lot of cheddar for the UFC to maybe coax her back in. But let's say she never fights again. What does Shannon Knapp say is the sort of lasting impression, lasting impact and contribution of Gina Carano?
Oh, I think Gina's the true beacon. I think that she really is the pioneer. I think that there's such a movement. I'm really going to say I've never been asked that, but I really think, Gina, I think, is always going to be one of the most, if not the most, important face for women in this sport. I mean, she really came in and made an impact when, anything that happens from now on is going to be easier because she's the one that broke down the barriers. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? I'm saying that.
Absolutely. I remember the Kenzie fight. I mean, Gary Shaw was very skittish about that fight, but they made it, and Showtime was very skittish about that fight. We'll give it a try. That was the whole thing around that fight. We'll give it a try, and it was a staple of MMA on Showtime ever since then.
Yeah, and so to me, it's like she's the one because anything, it was such a hard time. Those times were hard to prove a point and even get anyone to buy into it even a little bit. So she's really the one, I think, that broke down the barriers and started the movement, moving it forward. It certainly made it more easy for, the Ronda Rouseys and, even me with Invicta and the company. I mean, she's the one that broke down those barriers. Yeah,
I think she also, because of her fighting style and her charisma, brought forward to people how exciting. It's not just the look and what she can attract because of media attention because of the way she looks. It's that she actually in the body of her fights showed us how exciting female MMA can be to watch round by round. I mean, that Kenzie fight was just, Gina Carano, everyone could see the potential there, but when that fight happened, Gina Carano wasn't a household name, hardly. Yet what the real thing that happened in Mississippi that night is that everybody saw how exciting the fight itself could actually be, that they could actually add a completely different element and dynamic to what the spectator was experiencing than the men could. They just brought a new flavor to things that was really easy and fun to watch unfold over, well, it wasn't 15 minutes. I think, they were given 3-minute rounds back then.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think she was a very, very well-rounded athlete, very entertaining. I think Julie Kidsey as well, and I think that matchup, I think it did a lot for the, to pave the way, break down those barriers, and kind of change things. So, yeah, that's how I will always regard her. Plus, there's just Gina's just genuinely a kind person. Yes, she's a very attractive girl. But she's also very kind, and, she's definitely, like the girl next door, very friendly, very kind. And to see, interesting. There's the word.
There's depth there, if you're brought to the table because of the way she looks, you don't just, it isn't just that, you get hooked in.
No.
Like when you hear her do an interview, you want to know more, you want to see more.
Exactly. There was more to it. she was very interesting. And, I mean, we gravitated towards that because, you know what, she wasn't luring us, I mean, so different because she wasn't luring us in by what, you know, smack talking or doing anything. She was just one of those people that has that charisma that just kind of draws you in. And yeah, you do want to know more. And, I mean, that kind of goes back to, you know, what I was saying before about this fight that's coming up between Liz and Rhonda is, I hope that, and I'm sure they will, really focus on the aspect of who each one of these female athletes are. And I think that that's going to make it even more successful than, marketing it out there a different way. Yeah, Gina was just that person. She definitely was that person that changed it.
Sure. I'm going to be very interested to see if historically that is how we regard her. You know, if she doesn't want to fight again, even though the UFC is full steam ahead with female MMA, that could very well be the role that we assign to her historically, as opposed to, someone who actually fought in the UFC. It'll be really interesting to see where she settles in the history of this, though. If she doesn't fight again.
Tell me, honestly, if you were Gina Carano and you had what you have going on and you see what's happening with the sport, you've really kind of made your legacy. Yeah, you didn't go out on probably, the final fight the way you wanted to, but would you step back in? Just honestly, your opinion. I'm just curious.
Well, I'd be horrified to death because I'm not a fighter and I'd get my ass kicked. No, but
yeah.
That was just a quip. I think, yeah. I mean, I would be very intrigued by the possibility if they put a matchup in front of me. If I felt like the matchup they put in front of me would be bigger than any fight I did, I feel like that would be a fitting cap. But I think it'd be very easy for Gina to convince herself that her contribution is set in stone and there's no reason to complicate it by coming back just for a one-off fight.
Yeah, because, I've been asked that question before, and really I don't know what I would do if I was Gina, It's definitely interesting. And, she's been so far removed for the past few years or 2 years, however long it's been, in the training and getting back into it and that kind of thing. So very time-consuming. So, yeah, I don't know if she ever will. But you know what? Even if she doesn't, I am satisfied with the contributions that she has made. I guess as a person that knows her, a fan of hers, I'm definitely fulfilled and satisfied with the contributions that she's made to the sport. And I wish her the best, of course.
Certainly. We all do. You've no doubt observed Dana White's position on female mixed martial arts evolve, let's put it that way. He went from absolutely opposed not too long ago to putting two ladies in the main event of a pay-per-view. So what do you make of it? What do you make of it? What do you think's behind it? What insight can you give us?
Honestly, I think a lot of things. I think that he's very impressed with Rhonda and her success and how quickly, she's probably moved up and people have taken such an avid interest in her. I'm sure it hasn't hurt the success that Invicta's had. It certainly has to turn a couple lights on.
Yep.
People are excited about it, and, we're being recognized for, for only doing 3 shows and, not even under a year, and to be recognized as, a competent promotion, that's pretty exciting. So I'm sure that has some, something to do with it as well. So I think there's a lot of things. And, I like how he says it, because I think most of the time he's pretty open with these feelings and how when he says we're going to give this a try. I think literally that's what they're going to do is they're going to give it a try, and their job's a lot harder than mine was, okay? Mine was to come in and put on an all-female card. Theirs is to bring women into something that's built upon men and men only. Their job is a lot harder. There's a lot of, hardcore fans that, change is not always, accepted by everyone and received well, right? So
right.
Their job is way harder than anything I ever had to do. They've got to bring these female athletes in and convince, all those viewers that this is something they want to watch. So, me, I've got just the challenge to change minds every day, and that's easier. There's no, I'm not trying to make someone, shove something, take something away from them, because, there'll be people that are going to think that. you took away a spot from the men and put girls there. So they're going to have some issues, but they're definitely prepared, I'm sure, for that.
When you've told the story of Invicta's founding, you've talked about Zuffa purchasing Strikeforce as a watershed moment because, the aforementioned position Dana White had taken made a lot of the women under Strikeforce contract feel like they didn't have a future under the new ownership. Talk about what that period was like, and maybe give us some insight maybe you don't remember sharing about the phone calls that you would get, because it sounds like a lot of these ladies were quite panicked.
No, definitely. And I think, and I was one of the matchmakers, so, and I think that, the reason I got more phone calls was because I'm a female as well, and I think it was easier for them to call me up and, talk about it. Plus, I had worked with Zuffa before, and, it was that panic because, this is what they had always believed, or they had felt like they understood that Zuffa wasn't interested in female athletes, and that, really had no regard for them. So there was a lot of panic. What do we do now, Shannon? Where do we go from here? If we get let go, what's left? I mean, and you had to realize that over in Bellator, they were focusing on 2 different weight divisions, the smaller weight division. So, it left the 135 and 145 pounders just kind of sitting there going, what now? And I think that was, in all fairness, I think that was really the first time in my whole entire career that I ever stopped and really took a hardcore look at, the females in the sport and how the landscape really was. And I will tell you that I can remember thinking, wow, why did I not ever see this before? It almost made me feel like it was so fundamentally obvious that, it was dumb that I missed it before. It's that, that there was, a lot of people that had interest in it, and that there were athletes out there that really were focused, talented, wanted to fight, but the one thing that really truly was missing, and the only thing that was holding it back, was the lack of the opportunity. And from there, it was like, you just start getting more excited because it's, wow, I can make a difference here. I know how to fix this, or, I guess, that's the way I look at it, is I know how to make this better. So, and really true, and then it just started unwinding, just going crazy from that point. I mean, it's moved so fast that you can't even imagine. It's just moved extremely fast. And, not complaining because, you were certainly very blessed, but yeah, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, you ever had something that the thought kind of sparks? You start to make a movement, to, kind of, create or carry out that thought, and then all of a sudden it just takes off. That's how it was with Invicta.
Yeah, that's exciting. That really is a good way to put it in terms of understanding how the spark of the idea caught on, and that's and that's really, I think, what we've seen blossom here is a realization. And I don't think you were being boastful or self-promotional when you said that part of what probably changed the mind of folks at Zuffa was Invicta. Because, as I mentioned at the very top of the interview, Shannon, the fact that you've been able to fill these cards with so many hungry female fighters in these different weight classes who are all very exciting to watch. I mean, your last card, I think the whole main card up until the main event was all finishes, so exciting to watch, skillful and talented. These aren't 2 girls brawling, and, it's just there all of a sudden. Maybe it wasn't there even 2 years ago. Maybe that's why it felt to you like such a revelation, because you happened upon the idea just as the fighters were there, the depth was there, and the interest had been demonstrated.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, earlier, that it truly, truly is the reason I got in the sport, was to make a difference. And people that I've worked with over the years will tell you that, I will fight for the athletes. I'm a huge advocate, of course, as long as they're on the right, but huge advocate for the athlete. And to look over, and identify that there was an issue and a problem, and really, because I'm old school, you got to remember that too. I mean, there was a time that they came to me and said, we're going to put, a female fight on your card, and that was taking away a spot from one of my guys that I wasn't happy. So I've learned a lot too. I've grown a lot. So, and to take that moment to see and identify that, wow, they just need help, and that I can make a difference again in here. I mean, it was off to the races. Because I think you get burnt out a little bit no matter what you do. Whether you're anything in life, there comes a certain little point that, the passion, the fire's dim a little bit, and the passion's not there.
Well, you start to feel like a cog in the wheel. You don't really, you can't see your contribution clearly. You don't quite get what you're giving. Yeah,
and I think that I was kind of at that point too in my career, because it's like, oh crap, another one of these promotions I'm working for. They get bought out. And it always feels like, I don't care what job it is you're doing or where you go. You've proved yourself, and you've made it. You've climbed to the top again. And when they sell or something, you have all these new people around you again. Guess what? You got to climb again, to show your worth and all that. And I think that I was at that point again. That was like, oh, here we go again. And to just at that point, when I started working on the females and working on what could I do to improve that, the passion was back.
Take us through how the relationship developed with Strikeforce. Invicta does its first show in April of last year. Critical acclaim, great production, great show to watch. Everything came together. And then suddenly Strikeforce is loaning some of its female fighters to Invicta, and they remained under Strikeforce contract. Talk about how that arrangement came together and how it worked.
People always laugh at me when I say this, but it was I just called them up. I have a good relationship with them. People do always laugh at that part. They're like, huh? I'm like, well, you asked the truth. The truth is I called them up. I think that was a point that when, a lot of people could really identify and say that, they care about the athletes. If they didn't give a darn about what was happening with the females, they would let them sit there. But they didn't have, enough spots on the cards. Listen, they inherited kind of a mess, too. Mm-hmm. There were, there were a lot of contracts. So in all fairness, what they did was really a very kind thing, and I commend them for that, because if they hadn't let those girls fight for us, those girls would have been sitting there and, not making any money. So, I asked, and they didn't have the spots to put the girls on, so they definitely, they let the girls fight for me. So
excellent. And so, those were considered fights on their Strikeforce contract then?
No, they were just fights in mine. Organization to keep them busy.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. At least that's the way I understood it. Of course, I don't get involved in that.
I had no necessarily information about it, but it seemed to me like that would help them too, because it would be one more fight off their obligation to that fighter. With an uncertain future. I thought.
No, and I don't think that they did that. I think they completely assumed the responsibility that they had contractually to the girls, but they let the girls make money and be busy.
Sure.
So yeah,
it's important to remember when they bought the company, Strikeforce under prior ownership with Showtime, plus the Challenger shows, all that stuff wrapped together, and the CBS contract too. They were doing like 20 shows. They were contracted to do like 20 shows in a given year, and suddenly Zuffa takes over and the deal gets trimmed down to 8. That is not a lot of spots. So you think about how many guys we had on roster and stuff like that, and now you're cut down in your shows. So you can you can see how there wasn't a lot of room. So, and if they wanted to be jerks, they could have just, rode the storm out on the contracts, but they weren't, and I thought that was, at one point, and I'd say that during that time in the interviews, it's like, what if they didn't care? These women wouldn't be fighting. They'd still be sitting there. So, yeah, it was just that, as innocent as that, as I called them up and I asked. Is Amanda Nunes, who's on the next card for you guys on January 5th, is she currently under contract to Strikeforce as well?
Yeah, and Alexis Davis.
Alexis Davis, right. So it continues then.
Yamanaka, or I hope I said that right.
Hiroko Yamanaka, yep, right.
Yeah. She is too. I believe they all still are.
So this continues, even though a lot of folks expect the dissolution of Strikeforce after the January 12th show.
At this point in time, it does, yes.
I got to ask you. You just picked up the phone. I don't know if you called Scott Coker or Sean Shelby or maybe Dana. I don't know. And asked him, hey, can I use these girls that you have on a Strikeforce contract? You're going to pick up the phone and make the same offer to the UFC. If they bring girls over.
Yeah. I have no problem.
Maybe a dumb question, but, it's are you positioning yourself for this new world and making sure Invicta might have a role in maybe working with the UFC?
I am exactly what I've always been. I have no problems with helping people or working with people, So, sure, I mean, I can still, somebody's got to be out there developing, even if they're only doing one weight division. Once again, they're still got limited spots and stuff like that. So somebody, I'm happy to help, if that makes sense. Yeah, because
sure.
at the end of the day,
no doors are closed, but you will continue to develop, even if they don't want to, avail themselves. Because I feel like, it was a really advantageous relationship that you were getting there with some great female fighters that Strikeforce had. Marloes Coonan comes to mind as well, although I think she was cut when you signed her.
Yeah,
nonetheless.
Yeah, she's our athlete. Yeah.
Right. So, but nonetheless, the point stands, and I think with the UFC hitting a point where they're going to want, fighters developing, and they want a place to look to see who's UFC caliber, as we talked about earlier, and Invicta could very well be that place.
Yeah, and there's certainly, I have a great working relationship with them. I get along with everybody. Yeah, and the thing is I don't look at it like it's about them. For me, it's not, are you helping the UFC, are you helping this? No, for me, it's like the commitment I made is to get in here, make a difference, and help to grow the side of the sport. So, yeah, of course. I don't have any issues or any problems being, they want to deal with one weight division. I've got 5 weight divisions. Mm-hmm. I definitely don't have a problem working with them in the same capacity. And, we'll see how things go. I think, once again, they're figuring things out. And I don't want to speak for them, but,
sure.
I speak with them, and everything seems good, so.
You expressed before, Shannon, a little bit of resignation about hitting a point in your career where it's like, all right, another job, another promotion, another 3 initials or whatever, and they might get bought out, and it'll be the same process again. Now that you're sort of in pole position as an executive of an MMA organization, have you given any thought to the day where they make the phone call and might be interested in putting in a bid for your promotion?
People ask me about that too. I actually, and this is very true when I say this, is we've already had offers to be bought out, not by them. I need to clarify that real quick.
Wow, okay. I was about to write a news story, Shannon.
Yeah, because people start. I got to clarify that really quickly.
Yes.
So we have already had offers to be purchased. We've actually even had television deal offers. And, we haven't taken them yet. We're just not, we're not, we didn't come into the business to be bought. And we're not, I'm not saying that I never say never, because I'm not going to say never. If it was advantageous to the sport, the female, for, just keep moving forward, then would we do something like that? It's possible, because we don't ever want to hinder the sport, because that's why we're doing what we do, right? Mm-hmm. But we're not one of those people that come in and start a promotion and have these grandeur ideas that, we build it and the UFC is going to come buy it. We don't even talk about that. It's not something that...
But that's been a real phenomenon in the business.
Oh, my gosh, I think people are ridiculous. It's like, if that's how you think you're going to make your money, I just don't think it's a prideful thing to go in and you're going to build a business so the UFC will come buy it.
Right.
Why not? How about build a business and try to be successful at it and do something? Right. I just have a different mindset than...
Well, it's the only mindset that wins the day, so that's good.
Well, good. So, no, I don't think about them coming and buying it. If I was them, they don't need it right now.
Yeah.
Will that ever change? I don't know, maybe. But, right now I just focus on what really is important to us, and that is we got to keep moving, because we are knocking down some barriers and doing some good stuff. And that, to us, is what's very thrilling.
Yeah, so, absolutely. In this new scene, a question that floats to mind, and I hope you don't mind sharing with us.
No.
Are your fighters exclusive? Can the UFC come to you? Let's say they want to stock 16 girls for a tough season. Dana White expressed openness in recent remarks to an all-female Ultimate Fighter season. I need to get a whole bunch at once. I'm coming to you.
Okay, but actually what he said was he didn't say about girls being in the house. He
just
said female coaches.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I don't look for him to do that, but, maybe. Who knows? But, that's a conversation. Like I said, I have a good relationship with him. He respects me. I respect him. I respect the UFC. I figure, let's face it, without the things and their contributions that they've done, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation.
Oh, yeah.
That goes a lot different.
Absolutely.
So could he come and have that conversation with me? Yeah, sure. Could we agree on something? I don't know.
Sure.
But I'm open to it. I mean, I'm open. I'll listen to anybody.
When you sat down to, kind of lay out the business plan, or if that might be too formal, but just get an idea of how Invicta was going to work, and you mentioned some of the lessons you learned about sort of the economics of the business. When you sat down with Janet Martin and founded Invicta, what was your idea for revenue? Was it, we'll get to a point where we'll get a television contract that'll pay us? Because as well as Invicta seems to be doing and as exciting a show it is, I'm struggling to see where the revenue is. I don't know if you guys are still in a position where you're still dealing with investment capital and trying to, and if so, what's at the end of that road? Where does the revenue come in?
Okay, yeah, definitely address that. I think the best thing to say is, the first year, I mean, we have a business plan, of course. I think, everybody has to have one when you come in. And the first year was definitely about building the brand and creating as much buzz and awareness as we possibly could, to build it very quickly. And we've accomplished that. And the best way to do that was to go out and give the product away for free. It's marketing 101. You want people to try the product. And we were successful in the responses of the people, checking out Invicta, and they like our product. So I think as we move into this next year, we're going to look at different avenues to monetize. It will be kind of a different game plan moving into 2013. So, but we're definitely right on target for what we had projected and what the business plan was moving forward. So, television deals. Well, of course, everybody wants television, a television deal, but you know what we want? We want a partner. We want a business partner that is going to help us build, and be a partner. So, and take the same vested interest in what we're doing and to make that difference. So, but you know what? If television doesn't come soon, the right one, the internet, we're doing extremely well on the internet. I think it's a whole different time, with the social media and stuff and the avenues to get your product out there where people can enjoy it. So, because I can tell you this, if we'd have been on any network, the first 3 shows, we wouldn't have been available to as many people to build that brand. So, the internet was really, it's been very advantageous to us in the first year.
Okay, I'll accept what you're saying. It is. It makes sense, but there's no money there.
Of course, I danced around the actual how you're going to make money, Shannon.
Well,
I can't tell you that.
That's okay. No, that's fine. That's the answer. I can accept that. I'm not entitled to that information, but at the same time, it's like, you think about the internet. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of promotions that have done internet exclusive streaming, and they go away. There has to be a vision for how producing your TV is going to result in revenue. We had Steven Espinoza from Showtime Sports on this segment mid-year when it still wasn't clear how much time would be left in this Zuffa arrangement. And one of the things he said was, if we don't have an alliance with Zuffa, we're still interested in featuring mixed martial arts on our network next year, and perhaps not just with one promoter. And so the gears started spinning in my head, and I thought to myself, if
I were them, I wouldn't just be with one promoter.
Oh, why not? I'm interested in your thoughts there.
No, I mean, well, if I were them, do you really?
Oh, yeah, here we go again, yeah.
Well, if I were them, here's what I would do, is I would have a promoter. I would do both. I mean, I would take a promotion like Invicta that does all females, and I do a male promotion. I mean, look what maybe even another promotion. Because here's the deal. Look what Access Television is doing. I mean, here's the thing. Showtime they've gotten bed twice with 2 different promotions, right? Mm-hmm. And neither one of those situations have worked out well for them. So why not take a different little approach and a model to it? Why do you have to have just one? Why does one have to be the be-all and end-all? You need more content, and one show can't give you everything that you need. And, especially if you want to be consistent and provide that type of programming. Look what's happening with UFC on Fuel and, that programming. They're just one company now, and, it's a lot of work, right? So I think that if you want to, continue to do consistent programming and all that kind of stuff, I think you should have more than one. I think they should venture out and try that kind of thing. That's what I would do. If I was running Showtime, I would look for some of those top tier, smaller promotions that are out there that can continually deliver good quality content and get involved with it and get behind them and be a partner, you know?
Yeah, it's absolutely what I think, frankly, Stephen Espinoza was telegraphing in those remarks in that last interview I mentioned is the idea that that's where they want to head. And I'm thinking to myself, with their sort of institutional history with female MMA on Showtime and that being a real cornerstone of what they've contributed in the MMA they've broadcasted, they got to be calling Shannon Knapp, or Shannon Knapp's got to be calling them. You got to be talking to Showtime, Shannon. Come on.
Oh, come on. I see you guys always want to try to push me in the corner. I mean, I really like Showtime, but I've known them for a long time and worked with, you know, in the years. As a company itself, I've always liked Showtime. So, you know, I like the people. I've worked closely with them. I was always kind of like the liaison between Strikeforce and Showtime. So, you know, I have nothing but good things to say, and, you know, I really respect, you know, the people that work there. So, you know, we'll see. Who knows? Who knows what the future brings? So. Absolutely,
and you've earned that wiggle room, Shannon Knapp. We're here to pin anybody down. We're just here to ask the good questions, you know, the good stuff.
Trust me, I am blatantly honest. I mean, I will come as close.
Yeah, that's true.
You. I get myself in more trouble for telling, you know, like PR, you know, like Mike will be like, "Oh my gosh, why'd you tell that?" Well, because they asked.
Well, you've stopped yourself a couple times in this interview, so I could tell you've had some experience in terms
I'm just trying to. You know, because me, it's like I like to share. I'm excited. I'm like a big kid, so I always want to share and tell, you know, and I always think that, you know, just being straightforward is pretty much the best possible way to go about it. So, but no, I really do like Showtime. I think they're a great broadcast platform. I think, I think they got a lot going on right now. So, you know, it's just we'll see how things, you know. But I like a lot of people, so. It's just really what's going to be best for the company, you know.
Yeah, I don't get the impression you dislike anyone, Shannon.
Well, I can name a couple.
Okay. We won't. No, I don't want to be the interviewer.
I'll give you their initials.
Yeah, that's not the kind of interview we're looking to do. What are you trying to do here?
Besides, if I gave you the initials, you'd be like, "Oh, I probably know who that is."
I'd be on the hunt. I'd find it out in seconds.
Yeah, you could.
Are you guys still working with Jules in Japan?
Yes, we are. Yeah, we have a good relationship with them. I think that you will see some of their fighters back on the card in April.
Okay.
So,
very good.
You know, big things coming up. We're going to crown champions in all the weight divisions this year. We're going to, you know, we're really going to solidify who our champions are. You know, really, you know, focus and really. I mean, we're going to start. You know, we're bringing in a lot of we've signed a ton of new talent. You know, we're really trying to focus on building the depth and, you know, building some new contenders in the sport. So,
and it couldn't come at a more opportune time. Shannon Knapp, the right woman at the right time for female MMA, as Ronda Rousey and Liz Carmouche set to make a bit of history in Anaheim coming up in February. Invicta will be chugging along. January 5th is their next event coming up at Memorial Hall in Kansas City. You can catch it on Invicta's website, streaming live, and a ton of great fights on the card. Shannon Knapp, it was an absolute pleasure to have you for such extended time here on the Sunday Sit Down. Thanks for joining us, and best of luck in 2013 with Invicta.
Oh, I can't thank you enough for having me on and the support. You know, like I always say this, it takes each and every one of us to make that difference, and we thank you for that.